So you should not start your indie game project, your indie game dream project right away. It should not be your first project. My name is Thomas Brush. I make indie games for a living. And ever since I was like 15, maybe 16 years old, I've been making indie games. I want to jump into my subreddit here and answer a question from the user Totally Just Magic. Totally Just Magic asks, when should I start my indie game dream project? We're gonna take a look at this question here. I'm gonna answer to the best of my abilities. All right, let's head on over to Reddit here and take a look at this question. When should I start development of my dream game? I always wanted to make my dream game. As a mistake and failure, I learned that it's not a good idea to make it your first game. I totally agree, and we'll talk about that. The question goes on basically to ask, when should I start my dream game? Most of you know that my dream game, my very first dream game, was a game called Pinstripe. Okay, this is Pinstripe on Steam. This was my first dream game, my first commercial release. Believe it or not, guys, this was not my first game, okay? Also, I made a game called Neversong, okay? I released this last year. This was not my dream game, okay? Even though these games support my family, pay my mortgage, pay my bills, my first games were ones I created more than 10 years ago when I was just a teenager. And believe it or not, Neversong is actually a remake of one of my very first crappy games. Guys, this is Newgrounds.com. I think most of you in the audience know what Newgrounds.com is. Newgrounds.com was probably the very first place that indie game developers got started. In comparison, I think itch.io is probably a similar place to be right now. The difference is Newgrounds.com is for Flash games. You can see, if you look at my work here, I have music that I've uploaded here. I don't even know what this is. Let's take a look. So you can see I released a lot of different music here. So there's a lot of songs that I released here, artwork that I worked on. You can see I released a lot of animations and a lot of games as well, okay? My first game, my very, very, very first game was called Flash Geometry Wars. So this is just me ripping off Geometry Wars. I made this when I was 16, I think. I could be wrong, but I think I was 16. I'm 30 now. So you can see it's just junk. It's not the greatest game ever, but I just released it. It's like a 5-minute game that you can play on Newgrounds.com. The same is true with my first game, Coma. Again, you might think that the artwork is beautiful, but guys, this is a very short game. The code is crap. There's no mechanics that are special in this game, and I'm ashamed of a lot of the things in this game that I created. But my point here, guys, is that I had a very large portfolio for a teenager, okay? I was releasing music. I was releasing some artwork here, just a couple pieces of art. I really spent a lot of time actually making animations here.
Joe, I don't think I want to do this again.
So I just did voice acting, I did music, I did all of the work myself. My point is, for me, I had to release a bunch of content to figure out, this is important, to figure out my forte. Or another way of putting it is, to figure out my 20%. A lot of you who hang out with me on my live streams, you know that I'm really into the 80-20 principle. The 80-20 principle says that 20% of your input, so all the work you put into your projects, 20% of that is going to result in 80% of the output, what makes you effective, okay? So that 20% is your forte. Most of you probably don't know what your 20% is because, well, you haven't released enough games to figure out exactly what it is. Why do I know what my fortes are? And I'm still learning, but I have a general idea of what my fortes are. Why do I know what my fortes are? And why was I able to take advantage of those fortes in games like Pinstripe, which is artwork and music and atmosphere? Those are my fortes. And Neversong, okay? The way that I figured it out was I released content, and then, let's take a look here, I read the reviews. Okay? So as a teenager, I would just scrub through hundreds of comments to figure out exactly what I was good at, what my forte was. And here's the second point. This one's a big one. I built a thick skin. Guys, building a thick skin around, well, it sounds bad, but building a thick skin around your heart when it comes to trolls, when it comes to people who don't like your work, and also legitimate criticism, that is super important. I think a lot of you watching this video right now, you're so scared to release your big dream project because you don't know what it's like to get, well, insulted or get really bad comments and bad reviews. I've received some of the worst reviews, not only from users on Steam, but also GameSpot. GameSpot gave Pinstripe a horrible review. This really did devastate me when I released my dream project, but I don't know if I would have handled this well. I probably would have quit had I not gotten bad reviews on Newgrounds. I got plenty of good reviews, but I got plenty of bad ones as well. The same is true for Skinny. I got a lot more bad reviews than I did for Coma. But ultimately, guys, the point is I read a lot of reviews about what my forte was, but also what I was bad at. And that criticism, whether it was legitimate or not, it made me a stronger person. Before you release your first dream project, I highly recommend you start putting crap out there. Just put crap out there and let the world judge you. Experience the judgment. Almost, it's kind of like a sauna. It's like getting really hot and uncomfortable, but it's good for you, right? The same is true for releasing your games. You need to learn to get stronger from those bad reviews. And when you read those reviews, you're going to figure out, okay, what am I good at here? What's resonating with people? Once you figure that out, that's your 20%. And it's important to know what that is because you can use that to ultimately sell games. A lot of you, your primary goal is, Thomas, I just want to go full time. Like I want to make indie games full time. We can't really go full time in this day and age without making money. So I would highly recommend you figure out how to make money. You do that finding your 20%, what makes your games special. So release crap on itch.io. Okay, this is itch.io. There's plenty of awesome stuff on here, but there's also plenty of crap on itch.io. Just start releasing games on itch.io. Honestly, guys, I've released games on itch.io in like an hour, okay? You can find them. Here's one called Pong Pong Extreme. This is actually a game that I made in 60 minutes and released in 60 minutes. I have a video on it. After you finish this video, open up Unity, make a really crappy game about a square that you click and it changes colors. Something like that. Or maybe it shrinks. Upload it and call it Crappy Square Game. You've just released your first crappy game. You got it over with. You ripped the Band-Aid off. Now you're one step closer to releasing your dream project, okay? Now, guys, this is just my opinion. This is just what has worked for me. Everybody's personalities are different, and this really is a question about personality. I can imagine the majority of you out there do have thin skins. You get one piece of criticism. I got a piece of criticism today, and it really kind of ripped me apart. I opened up my email, and the first thing I saw was some guy insulting me. And it actually really hurt my feelings. And then I looked into it, and I realized it's the same person over and over again. It's a troll. That's something that I've learned over time. I've learned to just go, ouch, that hurts, and then go, that's not a big deal, okay? And also on top of all of that, learning how to get hurt means you can also learn to, I guess, through the pain, learn who you are. It's really hard to grow. It's really hard to learn who you are when you haven't first gone through some pain, all right? You could figure out your 20%. Most people that I know who've really figured out their 20% of what makes them super special and ultimately what allows them to sell their games, those people, they're tough. And they weren't born tough, right, by default. Some of them were, most of them aren't. They became tough because they had the bravery to actually release something and suffer through the people making fun of them for doing it. That includes family, relatives, friends, but also just the internet community and social media. The people who can suffer through that are going to be stronger for it. I highly recommend you do it. This is just my opinion, though. If you guys want to check out my subreddit below and see other questions and maybe post a question as well, and maybe I'll answer one in the future, feel free to do that.